Welcome everyone to Myth Informed with your hosts, Brian and Dimitri. Today we have the pleasure of chatting with two fine individuals, Chrisiousity and Tim Demotivator. Chrisiousity is a YouTube vlogger and socio-political commentator who enjoys discussing topics such as art, science, parenting, politics, and religion, but of course. Meanwhile, Tim is a musician as well as YouTube creator whose interests include philosophy, American politics, science, religion, and debating. Welcome, Chrissy and Tim.
Hi.
Hello.
So I was at Mythcon. Dimitri, you emceed Mythcon.
I was partially there.
Chrissy, you were on stage at Mythcon. Tim, what is your excuse?
Tim wishes he was at Mythcon.
It's weird. I actually didn't even consider going to Mythcon, which is odd because I don't know if you heard of that Kilroy event. Whatever, they had that free speech.
We were there.
Thing. I did not go to that, but I was going to go to it until it all completely fell apart and just became a total chaotic mess. And then I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to touch that thing anymore. But I'd originally planned to go to that. I was talking with Computing Forever before it all turned to shit. He pulled out because of personal reasons. And then it just looked like such a disaster that I didn't want to touch it. And then I didn't even consider going to Mythcon, but yeah, maybe I should have. I don't know. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it would have been hard to get an Uber.
Dude, Mike could have shoved you in his suitcase. You had it.
I guess that's true. Well, that was the thing, is free flights. I mean, free money. Could I just get money off you guys? That'd be cool.
If we had any. We're still trying to climb out of the hole that we dug ourselves in. But it was a fun event.
It was a fun event. They cost a lot of money. I mean, I think the entire tag for Mythcon was close to $55,000. So it takes a lot to run that event, bring all the flights, organize everything, food, and
and on top of Chrissy's bar tab alone, just.
Oh, don't even start. There was not. It was not open bar.
Well, you did get one free drink ticket.
I did, and I used it.
That's right. So what were your? Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to ask: has it become more profitable recently, or no?
Well, we usually we kind of are dependent on making money on the back end in order to make right now. We've been going self-sufficient. We haven't really drawn a profit on any of these, but we've been able to make our money back. So really, we're going with the money that we've kind of saved up, spend it, and hope to at least earn it back. If we can get a little bit more money in the kitty, that's great. We're a nonprofit, so that doesn't go to us. It would just go to future events.
We hope so. There is a GoFundMe out there. Please find it, and I don't even know how. I bet it's in the description.
It is.
So
it will be.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was saying to people yeah, I could get some free flights to America and just go on those guys' dime. But then somebody said that you guys are taking it on the road or doing some.
That's what we want to do. Is
thing.
Take it on the road. One of the problems with organizing an event on a yearly event is you got to get going early. And say you have your lineup scheduled 6 months in advance. 6 months is a long time. Sometimes something that could be topical is not topical in 6 months later. Imagine if you're having a big, constitutionality of gay marriage, and all of a sudden the Supreme Court's just fixed that for you, and you've got this huge panel. That would be an oops. But there's just some things that they're more or less topical.
Does that mean no free money next year, or?
Yeah, that model.
What is?
Well, we can do it as long as people are interested. We're willing to obviously fly in speakers and so on and so forth. But what we want to do is get people interested in talking about this stuff. I feel like there's places for discussion are limited. It seems like on college campuses you can't discuss this as much anymore. These discussions are happening online, and we're having them. We're having them at Mythcon, but it would, I think, be difficult if you looked at some of the static that we got, for trying to arrange, people on the right and the left, if you want to call it that, to talk to each other. I mean, you guys kind of cut through that and did it, and that was great, Chrissy. But it's hard to do. So I think at a college campus, I think it would be even harder. So what we want is to have this discussion happen on YouTube.
The real question, Chrissy, is how are you dealing with any blowback from actually, talking to the dreaded enemy?
Not really, not so much. Once people get a look at it, but I mean, I did a lot on the front end. I made sure to talk to people very clearly and take in a lot of feedback, and I think that that helps a lot. You know, I talked to um, uh, some people that I knew were very passionately against the whole idea of this, and they have good reasons to be. I won't say that they won't. And I just sort of laid out my goals, my intentions, what I wanted to accomplish, and why I thought it was a good idea. And it makes a big difference if people know that you're going there with good ideas, and if you're going there for a good reason. I mean, there were some people who were just like, "Oh, you're crazy," but you know, it happens. So
Well-
I'm not sorry at this point that I went. So I think it was a good experience for me, and it remains to be seen if it was if it's something that's useful. But
Mhm. Well, it's helpful. I mean, it humanizes people, especially if a lot of people shit on each other online, and then you get there. Like I heard a few of the you did like live streams after the fact or conversations, and people were shocked, like, oh, you know, like Mike was saying, you know, that people were nice, especially at the pre-party, and during the event, and people are just baffled that, you know, these essentially avatars, these people that they hate online, could possibly be nice in person. Well, no shit, because you know, we create these demonized personas, and then we think that these people are just evil monsters. But really, you know, outside of the few people who are, you know, white supremacist alt writers out there in the, you know, in the YouTube verse, like everyone at our conference was, you know, they're human beings. They have decent opinions, that you can talk to them. They're not going to rip your head off, and I think you kind of maybe experience that a little bit.
well, I've gotten, if you want to hear who I've gotten blowback from, it's definitely the people on your side, who have made sure, gone well out of their way to make sure that they know that they think that I'm fat. That, you know, like that's, I think, the number one feedback from the
Oh
skeptic
yeah,
Yeah.
community.
I don't know if they were on the side. If you're talking about
Yeah.
like atheism, AIU, the kangaroo guy, right? I mean, there was somebody, he put some obnoxious, you know, post up about.
He always does that though.
nothing to do
He's
with
obsessed with
looks, right?
attacking people's
But
appearances.
Stuan had jumped all over that, you know,
Yeah.
and like
Yes, she
if
did.
you look at the like ratio on his versus on hers, and, you know, yeah, I
well,
would.
and that dude is also a hater. He
Yeah.
loves nothing in the world ever. He just he lives
He loves
to
himself.
Yeah,
Maybe.
he
Or
He
just
doesn't
hate
even
himself.
love himself. I feel like, you know,
Yeah,
one day he's just gonna kill himself, and then no one. Anyway, but that just regardless.
and Jeff Holiday had a nice little fire back at him too. So
I guess the whole point is that's like low hanging fruit, right? Like we make fun of each other's looks on the playground, and some of that translates into adulthood because people don't just grow up.
Have you guys looked at the comments on underneath the panel with Chrissy and Mike? Because so much of it is just like, oh, Mike Rowlands, what a fat slob. Like, oh, he's disgusting. He's unprofessional. Like, he's not wearing. Look at his skirt. It's gross. Like,
I mean, a lot.
no wonder the feminists look like that. Stupid, ugly feminists. Like, that's like all of it. Well, not all of it, but
Well,
It's a
But
very
he
That's a
did
lot of
that
it.
on purpose to kind of. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be adults
you
about it.
gave him an award for the most comfortable person at the conference,
He
right?
was incredibly comfortable looking.
Oh, I'm not saying it's you guys, but I am saying, like, if you look at the kind of people who've become attracted to your conference, like, they are very many of them are in the vein of like, oh, fat, ugly feminists, like.
But we
this
don't
kind of
know if
shit.
those people were at Mythcon or not. I mean, we were getting trolled by both sides, right? We're getting trolled by the alt-right, and then the alt left that hate us, and then those. So it's hard to say on a YouTube comment who's who.
Yeah,
But
the
at
other
least last year, with Thomas Smith, they were all yelling like "cuck," like virtue signaling, like white knight, all the stuff. The people in the crowd were definitely yelling like the anti-SJW
last year
slogans.
got a little wild, right? But Thomas
Right.
Smith did directly, insult the audience, call them deplorable. So I mean, what are you going to do, right? I mean, when you fire at your audience, I mean, Chrissy didn't do that.
I know, but
I
I'm just
did a
saying they
little
wouldn't
bit.
yell. They wouldn't yell.
I
But
did
you-
a little bit, but
But
not.
I don't think you called them deplorables, right?
No.
But they wouldn't yell like "cuck" and virtue signaling and stuff if they were pro social justice folks. Like they wouldn't yell
but
that.
they would say different things.
well,
right?
hold on.
I don't know what they'd say.
No, Tim. The response to that is
Patriarchy.
that there were a bunch of people who did this whole boycott campaign last year. Well, no shit that all we got was one-sided. And in this case, we got a much more balanced crowd that were cheering for, for different
Really? You think so? I did not get that. Like, I didn't get balanced.
During Sargon's panel, I was sitting next to two women that described themselves as social justice warriors. In fact, during the Sargon Smith, I was around about 5 or 6 people that were social justice warriors. So I always
I think there.
I thought
think
social
there's
justice
a-
warrior was a pejorative.
well,
Oh,
no,
no.
it
to
is
some
or-
people it's a bad.
but it is deplorable pejorative. There's hashtag this deplorable thinks this. I mean, you can turn it
Yes,
around.
in fact, I think that Hillary Clinton made a huge mistake calling them deplorables because it just gave them something to rally around. So I agree.
Sure, but social justice warrior can be the same way, right? Yeah, hell yeah, I'm a social justice warrior, somebody might say.
Well, originally people were like, "What's wrong with being a social justice warrior? I like social justice and I like fighting for social justice." But I think it became just like a pejorative, like, "Oh, you're just an SJW or something." It's like it's just a way of dismissing anything
Right.
anyone's
So
saying.
to me, labels, I just don't like them. I mean, make it as you will. I like to talk ideas. If somebody is saying, I think that that you need to, if you're a white person, that you shouldn't be able to talk. Okay, that's an idea, and those that espouse that idea, I think, are wrong. But I that person may or may not be a social justice warrior.
We have to talk about population. So there are more dumb people in the world than there are smart people.
Are there?
What's it?
There is.
What? Based on what?
What's smart?
Based
Am
on
I
it-
smart?
So 10% of the population is lower than 83 IQ. You've got another set of population that's between 80 and 100. What is below 100? Below maybe like 110, whatever it is. That I would consider that maybe less than smart. Anywho,
So-
it's much easier to be able to either yell racist at something or at anything, or to yell cuck at something. It's just it's a visceral reaction.
So
You don't
you're
have to think about the argument, and so that's all. I'm not justifying that by any means. I'm just saying they're dumb people on all sides,
And your
will
audience
stupid
was low
things.
IQ.
Well, no, but a cuck that is a way to dismiss the argument that I don't want to deal with your ideas, so I'm just going to call you a cuck. And then others will use white fragility, right? To me, the concept of white fragility is bogus because that's simply a way to dismiss the idea. You're just uncomfortable because you're white.
Wait, didn't Mike say that?
No, but this is a concept that I see put in there all the time, and I just think it's bullshit. And
I see white people like them pretty fragile sometimes as a white person.
but
You know,
isn't
a lot of
that
people-
any different than snowflake, which often goes from right to left?
Right.
You're
I
just
think
a
that
snowflake.
it is. I think that it is different in where it comes from. Like, you have to break it down. Even cuck, even racist, all these things are in fact ideas. These are arguments. There's implicit arguments within everything. An implicit argument in cuck is that there is a way for men to behave in a way that men should behave, and a kind of masculine strength that that men should present. And if they're not doing it properly, then they're essentially like a man who just lets his woman have sex with black people or whatever it is that they're comparing that in their heads because they see it in that way. They see gender politics in that way. They see the way that sexual politics in that way. So that's like nobody would call anybody a cuck if in any serious way. They might do it ironically, but you're
Right.
seriously calling someone a cuck.
You're
It's
saying
because
that you're
you've
not-
bought into a gender.
Correct.
The
Yeah.
only time that I've ever actually seen someone call someone a cuck and mean it was when a Milo tweeted that picture of a black baby to Ben Shapiro. That was the only time I had ever seen it used realistically. Remember the South Park episode about the word faggot and how none of the kids understood that it actually was a pejorative for gay person, but it had entered the lexicon and it just meant someone who was just being a dick. And so
they started using it.
the whole, well, but that's because in society, that's how words evolve. So at this point, I would say the exact same thing about the word cuck is that people just yell it as a pejorative. They may not even know the etymology of it.
I suppose, but I think it's recent enough that people kind of know what it means, right? Like nobody ever calls me a cuck because I'm not a guy, you know. I'm not a dude. So like,
No,
like,
Well, it's kind of like the soy boy thing. It's an attack on masculinity. It's like you must be a weak man who lets other men sleep with your.
By the way,
partner
that
or some
reminds
shit.
me. Vadim was complaining about the fact that ostensibly I called him a beta when we were in the car, which was
it was Dima.
which was ridiculous, by the way, because we were talking about the situation and the typical behavior of a stereotypical behavior of leftists. And so I didn't go out and say
Which is what?
dude, being what you exactly just said, soft on any kind of violence, avoiding it at all possible costs. And in that case, I equated beta with it. And he was like, so he didn't say anything to me. And then obviously he went on that live
so
stream.
Dimitri, what is your opinion on masculinity and its relationship to violence? Do you think that men should be more violent, or they should be aggressive?
Not that they should be, but they are genetically predisposed to greater violence. And so that may not be obviously we live in the 21st century and we're a more civilized society than when we were cavemen, but genetically we are. And so if someone acts violently, let's say, but then in every other aspect of their life preaches nonviolence, it's a dichotomy, in my opinion. And that's exactly what I was trying to tell him. But obviously,
What do you mean soft on violence? Or are you being pro-violence here and saying that Vadim was too weak to use violence? Or are you saying he wasn't calling out violence of some kind?
no. Oh, so Tim, I don't know if it was almost like an inside comment of sorts. So
why don't you give the background?
Oh yeah, it'll take like 10 seconds. So he said that he was at a concert and he started getting attacked by a bunch of Asian women with plastic knives or something. I don't know the backstory, and it sounds weird repeating it. And then he turned around and I can't remember if he actually assaulted them.
I think he had to smack them,
or he smacked whatever it was.
He was defending himself, though.
Yeah.
He was pretty alpha.
That's my point. That's my point and I was like, oh, that's different from the beta mentality of like far leftist thinking, which is in that moment I was ascribing to him. And so he didn't apparently he didn't appreciate that. He didn't say anything in the moment. And then I guess he was a little pissed off.
Well, I would say, like, what are you talking about? What the beta mentality? Like, is that a thing you believe in?
I think that the fringe left movement does believe in I would say a high degree of nonviolence, and not even nonviolence, just
but the fringe left is like Antifa. They get quite violent. I like what idea are you defining?
No. I wasn't trying to paint him as Antifa. It was more so meant to be a joke based on his political leaning. And obviously it didn't land because now we're unpacking it for 10 fucking minutes.
There's a lot of confusion.
Well, I'm trying to get at, do you think that there are alpha and beta males? And if so, which are you?
He's an omega.
Damn it,
It's a
you're
theta male.
stealing all of my jokes.
He's a lambda, right?
Lambda.
Right. But the manosphere has actually a whole bunch of them. There's like 6
No,
different
you're
ones.
missing it was Revenge of the Nerds. Never mind.
Okay.
No, Chrissy, but realistically speaking, in that situation, I would probably say alpha. I'm incredibly extroverted, and I think those two go hand in hand.
What if you just like to be alone? Is that beta?
Then you're introverted, but if you're
But I'm
trying
still
to
married, so, and I'm not a cuck.
but that has
But when
nothing to
you're,
do with
but
it.
Dimitri, though, when you if you're dividing an alpha and beta, do you ascribe superiority to one or the other, or do you feel like that they're just different strategies?
No,
different
absolutely not.
components.
It's like extrovert and introverted. One is not better than the other. They're essentially synonymous in my book, and that could be wrong by however other folks are trying to treat these terms, but that's how I've always seen them.
But
So
it's a little bit.
It wouldn't be an insult.
It seems. Oh, sorry.
In regular parlance and the way that I was using it with Vadim, yes, it was supposed to be a funny insult. Clearly, he did not find it funny.
I think we should spend the entire hour just on this joke.
Deconstructing this joke.
Let's go do this.
Deconstruct it.
But I do think like
modern on this shit.
How would
one of the problems I think with the Manospherians is their obsession with materialism and basically saying you have to tick these specific boxes to be an alpha male, and they're like, how should I act around people? What should I do? When a lot of the time it's just like chilling out and taking it easy, which is what you really need to do. And that's not, you don't have to worry about being alpha or beta. You just have to worry about being a relaxed person who can just roll with the punches and go with the flow,
Yeah.
But there are aspects of social dynamics that of interacting in a society that really come into play. So I've been in situations where I've seen guys very actively and aggressively take the alpha role, and it was like a movie playing in front of my eyes. Like I knew exactly what they were doing. And
sometimes those people are annoying twats, like just jocks.
Of course. Oh, I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm saying that there are a variety of I'll call it courting strategy, wooing strategies, okay? And that is a strategy.
It is.
Mhm.
And
So-
the Manosphere gets that right. It works. The problem that
It
they get
doesn't
ascribing value to this.
No.
and
Let
saying
me
that
tell
that's the
you,
only strategy.
I had a guy come up to me once. I was at a party and I was just like literally just sitting there, and he comes up to me and he goes and he says, "So are you gonna suck my dick or what?"
Oh my God.
And you were like, alpha move.
I just
Oh my God. Wow.
and I was, not only did I get up and take the fuck off, I took all my female friends with me. Like, so there was an exodus of all the women from that party based on that one alpha move. So
Yeah, but
That was taking a whole bottle of Red Bull.
Well, hold on. But that's the problem, is you're equating that with an alpha mentality. That's just an asshole. Like that's
well, I don't see the difference.
Well, they can be misguided into believing that doing like these ridiculous moves is how you be an alpha, right?
you guys are not. This is a misrepresentation of the alpha strategy, which again,
The alpha it sounds like you're writing a book or something.
no.
The alpha
There's
strategy.
definitely,
Bang Volume 2.
No.
So
Oh
here's
my
an
God.
example. A group of people are trying to figure out where to go eat, and someone goes, "No, we're for sure going to restaurant A. Let's go," and that's it. And then people follow. That was an alpha move. It's supposed to. I mean, they're trying to get to a particular destination. Okay, fine, they made it. That guy is then going to use that same strategy at the party, whatever it is, for decision making. What game are we going to play? What are we going to do? That's what it refers to. It's to an extent being an a-hole, in that you're going to end up making fun of other males in that same situation to bring yourself above
Some
them.
people are born that way. That's sort of their MO. And where I think the Manosphere, they're saying this is a one size fits all strategy, rather than nuancing it, and that this is the only really way to succeed. When, if you have somebody who's more beta and then you try to say, look, dude, you need to be alpha, they're going to fuck it up, right? And then it's going to come up even worse. And who knows, maybe that's the person that went up to Chrissy, right? And so this is my problem. No, just roll with what you're good at. Do as soon as somebody says, hey, you need to change yourself and be this person over here, you're probably headed in the wrong direction.
Someone
Especially
to me was like, you need to be more alpha. I'd be like, why am I talking to you? Could you leave me alone? Like, I just want to go drink a beer now.
And let me give you an alternate. So my great-grandfather, actually, he was very high up, a colonel. He was there for the Panama Canal being built. He was served in Japan. And he was, if you looked at him, a skinny dork who was quiet and shy and liked to, his shoes were always well shined and his clothes were always pressed and he was quiet. And I remember, because he had an Irish wife that was loud as anything and could be a little abrasive at times. You'll be shocked that such a person was genetically related to me. But so that was obviously my great-grandmother. And somebody came up and was complaining to him about her, about her abrasiveness, because down south and women weren't supposed to be that way. They're gone. Goodbye. I'll miss you. Where'd they go? Tim, we're in charge now.
What's happened? Are they gone?
They're not here.
Oh, well, those guys, fucking morons. Fucking idiots.
Can you believe
they were saying
about alphas and betas? Like, what are they? What are they, wolves now? Come
total
on.
losers. Anyways, who should we invite? Let's turn this into a echo chamber.
We're in charge of the stream. Who wants to come on?
I thought, were you still telling a story or no?
I could tell it, but now they're not going to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I still have some questions.
All right, so,
I don't have the
but
opportunity.
anyway, so somebody came up.
Oh, they're back.
We're back.
We're back. Sorry for the deplatforming.
We deplatformed ourselves.
Well, don't go back and see what I said about you.
Yeah.
You're gonna
We
free
didn't
one.
say anything.
It was
Okay, go on, Chrissy.
So somebody came up and they were complaining about, my grandmother to him. And he just looked at them and said, "That's my wife you're talking about." And like I'm telling you, the whole room went silent because there was something in the way that he said that you could see the kernel was coming out, but there was nothing alpha about it. Mm-hmm. It was quiet, it was polite, but he had that sort of aura of, oh no, you're
talking
going to
about my wife, sir.
How isn't that alpha,
You
though?
stop it.
It cut right through. Like everybody was paying attention to him at that point. He commanded attention. I mean, I think that is alpha, but there's probably a million ways to do alpha.
And that's semantic.
Being quiet and confident can be like quote unquote alpha, right? Like you're just quiet and you're okay in your own space and people recognize that you're comfortable in your own skin. You don't have to like control everything or, take the lead on every single issue. Because if you do that, you might be perceived as annoying by some people. Like some people in the group might be like, that guy's kind of controlling.
Absolutely. And thus alphas tend to annoy people because of that, especially people who don't want to follow their lead, but they want to follow the crowd because they don't want to be excluded. And so then they have to. So I've on multiple occasions found alphas to be annoying for that exact reason. But I realize what's happening and I'm like, you know what? Fine. I'm here. I want to participate in this party, whatever it is. I'm just going to go along with it. So
yeah, what's a calm and collected person if they're not alpha? Just like a calm, confident, chilled out individual. Like when Mike came on stage wearing his dress and no shoes, was it an alpha move?
That's an interesting question because it was definitely I call that
Omicron. I just made it up.
I don't know if you guys were there, but I told Mike multiple. I'm like, you're the what did I call him? I said you're the Milo of the left. I'm like, what? Because I can tell what the way that he came out dressed.
He likes pedophilia.
No, and also does
he means style wise? Like
no, not even style wise.
What?
Just that
Gotcha.
he was trying to troll, and it was very obvious. And I'm like, kudos to you. I think
Well, Mike
it was
admits,
an effective
and
strategy.
he admitted to me that he says 90% of what I put online is shit posting. So, I mean, so to
No, but I
that,
think that's his actual fashion. Like, he came to my wedding. He wore like lipstick and like nail polish or whatever,
sure.
and it was that's what he wears. It was like, cool.
But you meant like what he was posting. But I mean, when
No, I meant specifically the way that because the next day he looked like, just like had jeans on, a hat, whatever it was. And I was like, okay, there's a specific reason why not only did you go to the party like that, but also came out on stage like that, because you're already expecting to get shit, right? Well, why not make it fun for yourself by trolling even harder? I would have done the exact same thing in his
but was
situation.
it trolling or was that just his style? I don't know.
That's what I don't know.
I think it's a style, to be honest.
Vadim sold out because he was showing me all of these T-shirt designs that he was going to wear on stage to like provoke people or whatever, and he just ended up wearing just a standard striped shirt.
Come on, what was the designs? Tell me what he was going to do to provoke people. Like,
there was one,
I
there was
was
one about
stupid, and it was like pointing at David Smalley or something. Or
no, there's like one about communism and stuff, and like
Oh yes, yeah.
he was showing me all these designs, but then when he actually asked, sorry, Vadim, if I'm throwing you under the bus here, but you missed the opportunity.
right,
Because it did seem like that audience was a little bit hostile to, I don't know, specific points of view. At least it seemed to me.
No, and hostile. Okay, no. When we say that, there's no doubt that there's a tension in the room, right? And QLET, the article in QLET, I think accurately covers that. And
I was like, Mike, you're racist. He's
I
like,
don't do French well. Okay, so in QLET, the article.
Quillette.
Shut up. Whatever that. The Q word, right? And Claire Lehman's magazine, there was a great article, and
I did not find it great.
well, okay, it captured what I think it found. What I think it did a good job was capturing the audience, right? That there was air of tension, and that was voiced, and people would clap and get vocal to points of view that were said on the stage that they maybe felt that they couldn't always say in their personal lives. But then at the after party, that was all gone. So I really that was sort of the solve that washed it around. And I thought for that part they captured it. What did you not like about the article? And we'll have to link this in the.
All right. Well, first I do want to say about the crowd. They might have been a little not thrilled about the ideas, but with one exception, and Dimitri dragged me out of there. I think it was you, Dimitri, that guy who was like, intersections of
Oh
what?
yeah. I immediately.
Intersections.
That was one dude. Yeah.
But other than that, people were polite. Like nobody was an asshole to me. There weren't a lot of people like coming up and chatting with me, and probably that's good because
they weren't hostile to you, right? They were hostile to your ideas, really.
Yes, you could say that fairly.
But that's okay in that way. I mean, like Chrissy, we've had a lot of debates on Twitter, but I never felt like we've had anything personal. Like in some ways, I want someone that's going to be hostile with my ideas sometimes to help me refine them. So, I mean, as long as we're just pounding on each other's ideas and not each other's characters, we should be okay.
Yeah. And I should also say, I think people might come to this and think, why isn't she debating? And this to me is more of a discussion because we do have some sort of knowledge of each other. Both of you know that if I wanted to fight and argue with you, I would. And I'm entirely capable of that. But I'd rather sit here and try to figure out, what let's talk about gender. Let's talk about politics. Let's see where your ideas really are. Let's ask questions of each other and see what's going on in those strange little Milwaukeean heads.
And that's what I think that the crowd, for the most part, did want. They wanted the discussion. I think they were open-minded, if not biased. But there were also people biased in your direction. I know I met them. I talked to them. I sat by them in case. But like to that extent, like I don't know if we want to dissect one of the issues that I thought we could throw out there, but white privilege is one that still bugs this Milwaukeean head. And it's because
Seconded.
to me, like, okay, why isn't it called dominant culture privilege? Because by calling it white privilege, it does suggest there's something in my genes that gives me privilege. But this isn't the case if I'm in Japanese society or Chinese society. Often said, well, we're not in China. I'm like, great, but we don't do a law of physics that's American physics, right? We have one law for the globe. So why, with our cultural theories, why wouldn't we have the same thing? And they're just applied differently. So dominant culture privilege is so much better than white privilege. What do you think?
Do you wanna take this, or do you want me to, Tim?
I don't mind.
What?
It's all good.
It's all good. So, all right. So there's a few things in there. One is that physics is, there's nothing different about the physics of China or America that I'm aware of. Like, there's not a difference in the gravitational strength or what have you that's going on. Like, your basic laws of physics operate in the same way as far as I know, but there is a difference in society in America and in China. So if you're studying the social realities, they are going to be different. And here is, I know that the concept of whiteness as sociologists use it bothers you. It's a burr in a lot of people's brains. Whiteness does not necessarily refer to any genetic or actual racial anything, because race is, they're looking at it as a social construct, not as a genetic construct, right? So whiteness is an ideology. It's a way of taking people and separating them and saying, these people over here are white people, and these people over here are black, and these people over here are brown, and like, it's divvying humans up in a way that is, from like a biological point of view, completely random. I remember watching a concordance video, and he's saying, you know, if you wanted to divvy people up based on genetics, you could have 500 races. You could have as many races or as few races as you wanted. Like, it's a completely arbitrary designation. In our culture, though, whiteness comes with a whole lot of baggage. The concept of whiteness, the concept of the white man's burden, which was very much the way that we looked at things, and manifest destiny, which were long-standing ideas that were put forward for many, many years, and had a huge impact on the way that our society was constructed. So we're dealing with sort of the remnants of structures, social structures, institutional structures that were built by people generations ago who had some crazy ideas about what whiteness meant. And so it's taking those structures apart requires taking the ideology beyond the structures. It's not your skin tone, and it's not how you're genetically wired. It's the concept that needs to be broken down and dismantled and removed, or the bad aspects of it.
Yeah, but as you say that, are you willing to take the risk that the society that you live in now, like, first of all, the question should be, you know, do you think we live in a decent society now? Like, no one's killing each other on the streets. People seem to have enough to eat, whatever it is. You're willing to jeopardize all of that because the structure needs to be torn down completely and built anew.
Well, I don't know what you mean by completely, but I think that the racial aspects of the structure need to be torn down, and one way or another, they're gonna be. Like, this is one of those things, when there's a huge injustice like that, it can't stand.
But I don't think it addresses Brian's original question. If
Okay.
if you and I were in Japan right now,
Uh-huh.
we would have zero privilege.
Well, and also, wouldn't we have to identify in the United States? I mean, forget Japan for a second, Asian privilege and Jewish privilege. because both of these groups are doing better than white people as a whole. In fact, Nigerian
Nigerians.
Americans are making more than the average American too. So there's a Nigerian privilege inside the United States. This doesn't make any sense. And how many people can tell a Nigerian from an American black? I don't know.
Okay, no, this is because you're comparing different things. You're comparing apples and oranges. All right, so the reason that we have historically why Asians do well is because we literally barred Asians for from immigrating into our country for something like 60 years. There was a ban on them coming in. And
Well,
when
we
we
signed a gentleman's agreement sometime around who did that? Sometimes around the Sino-Japanese War, like in the early 19. No, it was McKinley. Yeah, William McKinley signed the gentleman's agreement that
Yeah.
with Japan specifically.
Right, but there was a lot more than that. There was a kibosh, right? People were not immigrating from Asian countries in any kinds of numbers for quite a while. And so what happened is it was only when we started to lift those rules, but we didn't just like open floodgates and say, all right, anyone who wants can come in. It was only those people who had within their own country the wealth and power and prestige and privilege who could then afford to come and immigrate to the America. And so they started out way ahead. It wasn't their Asian privilege, it was their wealth, it was their education level, it was their money. Like it doesn't, when you say that someone has a white privilege, that doesn't mean that they are magically, their lives are wonderful in every other way. It just means this one, things are, all right, so a person who is black has more difficulty to the power of whatever whiteness gives you, right? It's slightly more difficult, or I don't want to make a exact numerical thing because I don't have that. It would depend. It's a little bit harder if you're black than if you're white. You're going to have a little bit more difficulty, right? But if you had something else, if you had wealth, if you had status, if you had high education, then that would also come in, and that would help you. You would have those things. That's what intersectionality is about. It's about not looking at anything as absolute. Whiteness is not an absolute gift from the gods that is going to make your life 100% better. It's just a lack of having to deal with racist shit.
Yeah, but is that not in a way promoting racism? Because you're trying to shine a light on it. You're trying to focus the microscope on someone's race. I fully agree with you that people have different experiences as they grow up. Maybe black people have a worse experience than white people. That could very well be the case. But that would be individual experience, right? If you keep pointing at people and going, well, that's a black male who also happens to be gay, and the intersections of a person, and now you're trying to isolate exactly what that person's experience is, rather than lumping us together into a society and saying we all need to stop focusing on people's sexuality, stop focusing on people's race, then wouldn't we be in arguably a more equitable society if we just stopped focusing on these questions?
I'm gonna not unless we have dismantled the problems that started it in the first place.
Well, what does
Like
that mean?
you can't. What does that mean? All right. So take for instance, and this Nixon's higher ups have fully admitted, have come out and said in as many words that our drug laws were based around the idea of putting black people in prison.
Yeah, I agree. The initial ones, yes, that's true.
Yes. And so the legacy of that, is it still going on? Whether or not maybe, God knows what Trump would, I'm not going to go anywhere near Trump, but let's say the next president might be a nice guy and might not, or a nice lady or a nice whatever, and might feel like they don't like that. But unless they actually fix the drug laws, unless they start looking at all the people that they put away for all those years and stole their livelihoods and their family, capacity to have a family, and took their labor, and start looking at how they're going to fix several decades worth of injustice and the actual material on the ground problems that created. Same with like redlining, or creating a situation where Black people cannot own property, or accumulate wealth, whereas white people could. Like, now you have white people starting out in a wealthier position, and there's a huge wealth gap. So until you start looking at that.
No,
But-
you have a really good point there, and I don't think anyone's arguing that. I guess the material question then is, what is the statute of limitations on these things? Like, when, because again, there's no redlining now. There is no the criminal justice reform needs to happen, but it's not disproportionately impacting some people versus others.
I would wildly disagree with that.
You
might have evidence to
we
support
we
that.
we have minimum sentencing laws which need to go away, and both right and left agree with that, but no one apparently has the balls to propose legislation for it. So that hasn't happened. So it's not a right thing or a left thing. But if we say systemically, we have abolished any kind of inequities. So how many years have to happen for the natural equality that you're talking about to kind of for it to level out, and for us to be like, okay, that's it. Now we're in a place where you can no longer yell racist at me because this happened 50, 60. How many years does that have to be?
I honestly don't know, because we've never gotten there. That's, I know that was Martin Luther King's ultimate dream, and I also know that he knew that there was a lot that needed to happen for that dream to even be in the even to be anything but a pipe dream, right? So I know that both of those things would be good. I don't want to keep talking about race when there's a lot more important and useful things that we could all be discussing and thinking about than who has what skin tone and why that matters. Unfortunately, until we actually do the work and start dismantling it, I don't see, we're never going to find out how long it's going to take.
Is that a problematic answer though? Because
here's my they call it white supremacy. We live in a culture of white supremacy. That by its nature like invokes that all white people are complicit in that, right? And then but your one out is if you're an ally. This is a problem. I think people know if they've been given a head start, right? If you're Jay-Z's kid, you know that you got a head start. If you're Malia Obama, you know you got a head start. If you're Donald Trump's kid, you definitely got a head start. But tons of white people don't get head starts. And to say white privilege and white supremacy, all you're doing is foisting divisions between two classes, usually two like lower socioeconomic classes.
And it's a
renaming this would be
Can I give my view quickly on white privilege? Like the way that I've always seen it is that white privilege is basically broken up in terms of like where you live and who you are. So a lot of people say, oh, what do you say to white people who live in a trailer park and they're alcoholic and they have a terrible life? Well, it's basically that they have white privilege, but to them it's functionally useless because they can't access that privilege in any way because of their socioeconomic situation. But other people, depending on where they live and the socioeconomic situation they're born into, will be able to access their privilege and actually use it for something. So, for example, me, who's like kind of middle class, I have plenty of privilege. And like, for example, I was let off from getting a speeding ticket. I have no idea why. I don't know if a person of a different skin color would have gotten a speeding ticket in that situation, but
But that's a
You know-
good point. Is now you're trying to identify exactly the reason, because the cop could have had an extra cup of coffee in the morning, or cop could have been gay and thought that you look good. I mean, there could be a variety
been a
of
female
different.
cop.
Well, a better example would be that my parents are well off, and that allowed me to go to university and have all of these different benefits.
It's entirely possible, but are you gonna go
Maybe
home
the cop
and like flog yourself because, oh my God, you had parents? That's
No,
the
no, that's the
problem.
other thing. It's the other thing I was going to say is I don't get why some people take it so personally. Like white privilege is something that's like a personal insult to you, because I think from the sociological perspective, a lot of this is just just so that you can analyze inequalities in society, and the way that the alt-right kind of
It's
uses
more
it
white
is to say,
supremacy than white privilege, because they say we live in a culture of white supremacy, and this is synonymous with American culture, and this grinds me.
but if you
Because-
have white privilege and white supremacy is true, like nothing can really touch you. Wouldn't you
White
just shrug
supremacy
that off?
is like the Aryan physics, right? When I hear white supremacy, this conjures up Nazi ideals to most everyone. So to redefine the word and say, oh well, we're using it in a very specific way, well then get a different term.
Yeah, it's
We
bullshit.
already have a
Yeah.
term.
Why
for
do you
it.
take it personally?
That would
That's
be
what
like
I'm
if I
curious
went to
about.
my girlfriend and said, "You are disgusting, honey," and she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "I mean that in a really nice way because I've defined it this way. It doesn't matter."
And it
most
But one is just a broad, vague thing. The other thing is a personal insult towards an individual. So that's the thing that I don't quite get. I understand, like people on the left can also get
It's part of
insulted
it.
by.
yeah.
If you say all Milwaukeeans are scum, yes, you didn't call me scum, but I'm included in that group of people. So you essentially did.
Well,
And
I
that-
don't
and
think
now it doesn't
that
matter
means white
where-
people are scum. I don't think white supremacy
Well, I didn't
means.
say you said it,
Unless,
but
like,
if a
you are
person,
taking that as like the Nazi thing, but it really depends on your understanding of the term. If you think it just
He's
means
using
that
it as
they
an
dominate in
example.
politics and they dominate in the popular culture and they have the majority of the wealth, then is that saying they're scum? I don't know if it's saying they're scum. Like,
Brian's absolutely right, and he's not saying that you're saying it's scum. He's saying that the term white supremacy has a particular connotation. Doesn't matter how you try to use it.
but white privilege is no good to you either. So, like, what could you call it? Then?
it's less offensive. It's
Less offensive.
slightly offensive. It irks me, but the white supremacy grinds.
So I would disagree with Brian here. I've come out and I've stated the way that you're using white supremacy, I agree with you. Oh, sorry, not white. Jesus Christ, white privilege.
Racist.
Yeah, racist. Like the way, Chrissy, that you described white privilege, in that there may be some aspects we can't quantify how they are, but I may have certain situations like I'm running down the street in a hoodie, for example, and I had this situation. I was like sprinting around the block and I was wearing a hoodie and I was like, huh, I wonder if this would be different if I was black. And I thought about it for a second. I'd be like, yeah. So that's a moment, of course, and we should all have those. But when you telegraph it, when you try to shame people with particular terms like white supremacy, white privilege, for whatever reason it is, now you're being a bad person.
See, I don't feel like I'm being shamed, and I don't feel like I think that centers white people too much in this. This is a critique or white people's feelings, and now we're back to white fragility.
It's the taking things personally. Like that's something
Yeah,
that I
like-
also don't quite get.
But it's
I'm
taken
not-
personally.
I feel no shame.
No, I'm not, Chrissy. I'm not talking about you, but because, and correct me if I'm wrong anywhere here, because you consider yourself an ally, you're going, I have no shame. I realize what my privilege or whatever is, and now I'm going to try and find people who I think may not realize it, and I'm going to try and hit them with this barb. And that's where the shame factor come in. You're projecting shame. I know you don't have any yourself, but that projection is insulting to a lot of people.
Yeah, and well, there's a couple things I'm going to say about this. I mean, I actually don't. I go out of my way not to use white supremacy. I understand the term. I understand the way it's being used, but it's not, to me, it's not helpful or useful. It's never it's never gotten me anywhere. So I don't generally use it. I don't tell other people not to use it, because if they find it helpful, go ahead. You know, maybe they're just different. But I'm not, but I don't, I know what they mean. And I often go in and will tell other people, oh, you're getting upset, but this person isn't saying what you think that they're saying. You know, they're not discussing this. But there's also a lot of this talk, and there's a lot of discussion around terminology and around, you know, exact and explicit of what could we call this and what should we call this, that often gets to a point where it's like, how about let's worry less about what we call it and worry more about what we're doing about it and what the actual problem is. Like, I feel like a lot of times that this is a distraction from, because nobody's ever satisfied with any word. Like, there's not a term that
you're right.
I've ever come up with. And I'm gonna finish this, because I've got a video coming up, tentatively titled "Toxic Masculinity is Named Just Right, and There's No Female Counterpart. Deal with it." So, like, sometimes I feel like there's a virtue in just throwing cold water on people and saying, hey, like, no, we have to deal with this situation, and we can't
raise a lot of money for ALS.
That's the trolling aspect that I was talking about, and it's effective. But then you gotta own up to the fact that it's a troll tactic.
I've got a question I'd like to ask Brian.
Yeah,
that's okay. But first, just on my point of like being privileged because I was born to my parents or whatever. In relating that to white, so to speak, whiteness, I live in New Zealand. You know, if I was Maori, they have far worse socioeconomic outcomes, and I would just be less likely to be in a positive financial situation and be able to go to university. So I think it really ties into the overall makeup of the economy of your country and where you live in terms of privilege. So that's how that works. So I think in Japan, Japanese people are obviously the dominant culture there. So white privilege in Japan, and I lived in Japan for 4 years, so I was the minority over there. I couldn't access my white privilege in any way except, you know, in relation to my home country if I wanted to get some.
Well, why are you calling it white privilege? That's the problem. Stop.
Well, that's the thing. Well, but that's the thing is I think it really depends on where you live, and I don't think that privilege is just a universal concept.
Exactly.
Dominant culture privilege.
It's dominant culture privilege in Japan.
Yeah, but the dominant culture in America is white, like, you know, and that was the second point I wanted to make. You were saying that, like, calling stuff, you know, white, black, whatever, is kind of racist in its own way. Well, I think that the most useful thing about those categories is for gathering data, to be honest, like data on like the, you know, socioeconomic situation, like maybe in the census or whatever it is. So do you think it's racist or whatever to analyze, you know, how Asian people are doing in a culture, how black people are doing, or how white people, like, can you use those categories or you can't?
And I think if you identified a population, it doesn't matter what color or gender or gender orientation, and they're doing poorly, I think it's an absolutely okay thing to say, hey, are we doing something wrong that maybe is holding these people back? What can we do to make sure that they have an equal playing field or something? I'm with you, and you will get, I will donate to that cause. But when they say, no, well, what can white people do to give up their power? What can they do to sit down or shut up? Like, Matthew Dowd said, he blocked me on Twitter for saying that as white men, we need to sit down. We need to reject appointments. I basically said, oh, you're advocating for racism now. Exactly. I said, congratulations.
I wouldn't take that personally. I'd be like, it's so easy to shrug that kind of thing off, you know.
But what do you say to your son then, who is a white male? Do you say, you know, let's shoot for maybe McDonald's or a part-time job, or let's just shoot for nothing. Don't try to apply yourself. Don't try to get to college, because you need to make space for a person of color.
Exactly.
This is bullshit. Like, I mean, I think it is okay to uplift minorities, but
I would probably say to him, don't, you know,
white people.
I say
say, like,
smash it all, burn
I
it.
just say
how do you rate
you do
burn
what you
it to
think
the
is
ground.
right.
I mean,
You
no,
do what you think is right.
I've never met a Marxist, right? The Claire Lehman says, I've never met a Marxist that didn't go to private college. And see that there's some people that absolutely hate the rich and they want to tear down the rich, but that doesn't necessarily help the poor. I would love to help the poor, but I don't think that that is concomitant with tearing down the rich.
And that
All
I
right, two
But
things.
the sociology thing is you have to have some sort of categorization of people, and it's not genetic. It's not like the white supremacist alt-right version of like genetics, like there's immutable characteristics which make you this and that. I think it's basically you take like 7 or 8 different factors and you pull them all together and you say this general swath of people is white, kind of.
Yeah, but you
this
said
general.
I mean, Tim, your exact quote, I so love that you said this. You said, well, I lived in Japan for 4 years and I could not access my white privilege, as if it was a fucking bank account that you could somehow like extract assets from.
In a sense, that's actually a good analogy. It's like if you had a bank that didn't work in a specific place. So when you go there, you can't.
That's exactly why that term is bullshit, is because
If we call
Japan
it dominant culture privilege, it fits.
Yes.
I
think you're just reading too much into the analogy.
starting a movement.
I think we're being a little bit.
It's not literally a bank.
Because you have to be able to name what the dominant culture you're talking about is, whether that is.
We could just put, in this case, America. And
Well, no, America.
Japanese
That
privilege within
means you're defining America as white. If you say America privilege is white privilege, if what you mean is white, if that's the dominant culture you're talking about, or if the dominant culture you're talking about is male, you have to be able to say that, and you have to be able to say how that works and how that was set up and the kinds of things that were happening.
But you're not
whether
just
it's
talking to
sundown
America.
town or whether it's I'm giving people things people can look up later, like sundown towns, and how that it was structured. Things like unemployment insurance and other social programs, and how the GI Bill was given out to people, and how it was specifically done in a way that Black people could not access their GI Bill benefits, even if they had served, that they couldn't, that domestic workers and farm workers, seasonal farm workers, could not get unemployment insurance. This was done intentionally. It was done thoughtfully. They knew what they were doing when they did that, because they wanted a certain group of people kept in an underclass and used as labor.
Are bad, right? And this is why I really do see things like affirmative action are for Black people, right? These were the people that were disenfranchised along with Native Americans. But now we want affirmative action for like all kinds of immigrant groups, which doesn't make as much sense to me. And one of the other issues, like with white privilege, like, okay, the guy I buy alcohol from, his name's Sam, right? Is Indian, right? Now, do you think his real name's Sam? No, but he goes by that because what he's doing is he's blending in. So is he adopting white supremacy? Like, and if you would ask him, is America oppressive by race? He would say no. What was oppressive was the caste system. In my country, it was the caste system. And now I'm here, we're good. But they're like, but don't you get any crap for your race? He's like, no, I'm fine. And it's
well, look, I don't know Sam. Like, I
like him because he sells me beer, but go on.
That sounds like a swell dude, but that lovely anecdote aside,
Lived experience, Chrissy. You got to take it seriously.
Someone in the chat disagreed. They said, Tim has it wrong. I've been to Japan myself. They love white people, at least outside of major cities. Yeah, but I would say that that's more of a kind of like fetishization of white people. Like whenever I talk to anybody, they'd be like, oh, American? Are you from America? Like they'd always say that constantly.
Indian.
And they'd always try to get you to teach them English.
Sorry, Chrissy, you were saying.
I just did a racist voice. All right, go.
I can't.
Also, nothing racist about it. That's exactly how they sound.
What it's like to be someone's fetish. Okay, go on.
But yeah, they fetishize white people over there.
Yeah, I think we have to look with honesty and just being truthful with ourselves. about where these lines of power go, how they're set up. And when people say power, I think that they're, remember that even the postmodernists, the evil postmodernists that everybody hates so much, they never said that power was a bad thing. You know, power is not intrinsically terrible or horrible. It's just a social factor. You know, like if I go to a hospital, the doctor might have the most power, but that's a good thing. Like there's nothing wrong with the doctor having privilege of his education or her experience or knowledge. Like, so these sorts of how these things interact dynamically. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. I looked at the chat. That was a mistake. Silly people. All right, so
No,
God bless you. But
well, that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have Mythcon too, was like the discussions between people are always better than a chat room. I mean, nothing wrong with the chat room, but you know, having a face-to-face conversation always helps. But go on.
And even these are common, but this is not. I mean, we had a much better conversation when we were, you know, hanging out at the bar than you know, than something where we're not face to face.
Oh, I gave you a ton of shit, didn't I, Dimitri? I think I remember doing that.
You did. Oh, by the way, I take it as a personal offense that you didn't defend me against what's her name?
KW.
Yeah. She made insinuations about the fact that I got you drunk and then made you talk to Richard Carrier, which was
and
bullshit.
that you were Mythcon completely just didn't have any idea how to respect women's boundaries.
I thought you were gonna have my back there and you were gonna say no. He asked me 7 times if I was okay with it, and then I was like fine, and then I went and got him, and I got that weird guy away from you. I went out of my way. 0 props.
Yeah, I don't really feel bad about it. I did tell her that I did say that I didn't feel like it was a thing, like it was the way that she said it was. Like I understood what she was saying because
she completely strawmanned the fuck out of me and then was like, those mythicist people have no respect for women's bound. I'm like, the fuck? You weren't even there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not... I'm so glad I got pulled into this again. All right, so
see, I was gonna confront you about it.
We feel your pain on this one.
No comment.
No, that's fine. Like, no, I was drunk, and you asked me, and I don't know if you knew that I was drunk or not.
I had 0 idea. You looked fine.
You did.
I didn't
know until you told me.
I'm very Irish. I can take a drink. Keep it standing.
0 excuses.
But yes, I have been drinking quite a bit. And so that's what I said. She asked, why did you even talk to Richard Carrier? And I said, I was drunk and it seemed like a good idea at the time. And who brought that up? Oh, Dimitri. The Mythcon guys.
The Russian enabler, that bastard.
Both times it was Dimitri too.
It was Dimitri. And and when she was upset, and I could understand why that she was upset, but I didn't get upset, and I let her know that I wasn't upset. So I don't know what difference any of that makes. I can understand that she was concerned that people would approach me for something I had already said I didn't want to do when I was drunk. But again, like I said, I didn't know if you knew I was drunk. And I don't know if you would have made a difference or what it was about. I'm not mad about it. I don't have a problem with it.
It's not that. It's just that having conversations is so much in our DNA, and we're so much about it. And I was so excited about the fact that you could have talked to someone who you disagreed with online. That was amazing. But for that kind of comment coming from someone who wasn't there, who has some demonized opinions about myself and others, who's called me, did she call me a Nazi?
No,
I'm pretty sure.
Well, we're going to call that, I'm just going to chalk that up to trolling. And I think that most people are going to be with us on that one.
And that was the whole point. I was like, man, come on, you can't you can't make character aspersions on people. And again, not you, her. And then, you know, I get it. You're among friends. You can't really, you know, go ham on her for that. But it's all right. I just wanted to bring that up.
Well, I think that she's concerned, you know, and she has a right to be concerned about situations where people have put forth boundaries and then those boundaries get questioned. I wasn't bothered by it. I told her I wasn't bothered by it. I do know that there are some, I mean, you might say that I'm an alpha female. And therefore, if anybody comes and tries to like mess with me, I don't put up with it for a second. But like, so if I had really been dead set against not even talking to Richard Carrier at that point, you know, nothing you guys could have done would have changed that, because
I get that sense too.
That's why I asked you like 7 times. Are you sure? Are you sure? And then you were like, all right, I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
Dimitri practicing affirmative consent.
But I do. You know, the interesting question is, and this is gonna be like a devil's advocate thing.
Okay.
How do you know that she actually cared about you by pursuing that line of questioning versus using it as a platform to be able to not only virtue signal, but also attack someone she doesn't like? Can you admit that there is even a 1% possibility that it could be the latter?
Oh, Christy loves me. Christy's been my friend for years. Are you telling me she doesn't care about me now?
No. I'm not saying that she doesn't care about you. I'm saying that it was an opportunity to like stick the knife into someone, organization or person she does, you know, ostensibly she doesn't like. So
I would certainly say that she did not like, if you're asking me, was there a bias there?
I think it's a motivation question.
Yeah, like everybody, when they have biases, like if you're, all right, so let's say you two are dating, right? And I just detest Dimitri. You know, I just hate him to bits. So Brian says something, you know, Dimitri said something to me last night, and I'll be like, yeah, that Dimitri. Like,
exactly.
Is it because I'm like trying to do something, or is it just because I just don't like you and I'm inclined to see things in a negative way when your name comes up?
That's exactly what I was. That's where I was trying to go with that. Is for anyone who heard that damn stream, I did nothing wrong.
I didn't.
Dimitri got the absolution. Thank you, priestess Chrissy.
God. Has that been
like I'm plying you with drinks and then making you, and not making any sexual advances, making you talk to people. Ooh.
All right, but now I want you to apologize to Vadim for calling him beta. That'll be our trade-off.
Yes.
I did not overtly call him a beta. Yes, I made a joke at his expense, so I apologize to Vadim for making him feel bad.
I've got a thought which is related to this. I don't really want to touch this conversation with a 10-foot pole, but you took issue with me saying that it was like a shitlord convention, and I think perhaps with Christy, I don't know, a lot of where that comes from is last year with the whole fucking heckling of Thomas Smith and the whole extremely sort of partisan divide, that a lot of people were just seeing this as kind of like a shitlord convention. I think I said that in my video and you took issue with that, but I've also heard from people like Chrissy, I don't know if I'm allowed to mention this, whatever, that you guys have a kind of religious belief in the power of like conversation and dialogue to change everything. So if it was more of a charitable interpretation, it would just be like you really care about the ideas and all you want is just this ideas festival. But the cynical view of it would be perhaps that you're just trying to cash in on this anti-social justice trend, and your conference was getting a bit stale and you weren't really getting the kind of views and attention you wanted. So then you brought in Shu, Ahmed, and Sargon. Now you're going down that route. So I don't know which one it is, but
I can answer that wholeheartedly. It's definitely not the latter, or else we wouldn't be 15 grand in the hole right now.
Well, it helps with attention at the very least. I don't know if it helps with the finances.
Really, I need 15 grand worth of attention. I don't have shit going on in my life. Like, no, seriously.
I mean, our prime minister had to pay $10,000 to read the top 10 on David Letterman, so attention's important.
Though it's funny.
Our former one, not our
The
current one.
motivation question is a legitimate one, but we do believe in that dialogue, and that's why we do our best to have both sides represented. And we had some at the last Mythcon 4, we had a number of people that were like on the left. I still don't like we're left and right, but we'll call it left. Back out. That was a bummer. And then this year we did I think a lot better job of keeping it even. And you know, what do you think? Did
it used to be about the sides, or
Yeah,
now it's all about the sides, like anti versus SJW, whatever.
Yeah,
whereas formerly, wasn't it about rationalism? Like, I don't know if that's a word, rationality and secularism and religion. And
so I wanted to address that
Oh.
pivot, because that was the crux of your question.
I
So
missed it.
for the first 3 years, it was all an atheist conference. And the way for those that are atheists out there that have been following trends, so in-person conferences have been dying, like just dropping like flies. People aren't interested in listening to the exact same things.
Attendance is down
over and over again.
Some conferences that started they canceled, and then the people that bought tickets didn't even get to go and to get their money back.
And so we loved the aspect of having conversations, having theists talk to anti-theists.
Yes.
It was always exciting. We had a few lectures sprinkled in there. And so the main crux with Mythcon 4 is we still wanted to maintain the atheist angle, but we were like, well, how can we make atheism more interesting to a younger crowd? And that was bringing in relatively famous atheist YouTubers who then also had a very political slant to where their content was going.
Right.
And then on Mythcon 5, you know, obviously we unpacked what happened during 4, people calling us a Nazi training camp, all this random ass shit that happened. And we were like, okay, so this was also fun, but now we need to make a decision, because we're either going to be still an atheist conference and deal with that, or we're going to move into the socio-political realm, still deal with conversations, but just in a different capacity.
So conversations were always there. So we changed the mission statement from kind of atheism promotion to viewpoint diversity promotion, with the idea of limiting authoritarianism with the goal of seeing like a more pluralistic society. So that will still cover atheism and religion when a religion can be the authoritarian construct. And you definitely see that in parts of the world and even pockets in America. So it's still relevant, but we feel like that the mission statement gives us more to talk about when things like culture or things like politics become the authoritarian influence.
But do you see these people as experts? Because I think a lot of the qualifications of many of us are basically just that we have a YouTube channel and we rant at a camera.
But this is where the debate is happening.
You guys are
students, are amateurs.
You guys are driving culture. That's the thing, is no one wants to
made up bullshit. I know people might say that about me, but I think like there's so many factual errors in many people's videos, like Skeptic and Sargon, for example, that is it just about the conversation? Like, it doesn't matter whether the information is actually valid in any way.
It doesn't. You should critique it. Where you find errors, you should critique it.
And again, if you were going up and talking to Armored, for example, I would hope that you would go through hours of his footage, whatever, pick out moments where you disagreed with something and have him defend them, or whatever it is.
Or
that
point out factual errors.
Like his video on postmodernism was completely inaccurate, and it got a slew of responses from other YouTubers saying, like, you've completely misunderstood what postmodernism is. Like Dr. Lehman, who's a pretty good YouTuber, completely picked it apart and just totally destroyed it factually. And then Greg just ignores it, and he's just like,
I don't think I'm going to, I can't, why am I in this position? But I do think that Greg, he made a video about the top 10 times that Armored Skeptic was wrong. And I think postmodernism was in there.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong about that. Because I
thought modernism just meant science and stuff. But it's not like modernism's got like
sometimes you've got
expressionism in it, which is incredibly abstract.
Go out there and say something, and then you get a whole slew of feedback that's like, dude, you are way off. You won't forget that lesson, right?
Well, I've got to say,
to ignore it, but it's hard because there's a lot of it.
And I don't expect you to respond because you have a professional relationship, but there when it comes to Carl, I think you're way off in having him. Like, he is, on his best day, he's uninformed sophistry. But on his worst day, that isn't even start to talk about what he is about and what he does. And it's not good, and it doesn't create dialogue for people, and it's kind of goes against everything that you say that you're in favor of, because how can you even start to have a dialogue? For all that you may not like Christy Winters, for instance, she trounced him in debate. And what did he do? A month or two later, he led and participated in a huge Twitter dog pile about her going on and on about, and I'm sorry to say this out loud, but tight Asian pussy. And people were putting would you even rape her things, and she was getting that by the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and you know what that's like. So that is not how one puts forward the value of rational debate. It isn't to turn around because a girl beat you and sexually harass her and be a party to
you're
that.
right, Chrissy, in that regard. I'll address a few of those points. I think Sargon would be the first to admit that he got his ass handed to him in that debate conversation. I don't know about what you're talking about.
Did you watch it?
No.
I did.
I haven't seen it.
I did. I watched it.
I've heard him talk about it.
Okay.
So I would say I don't know about the follow-up with the Twitter dogpiling. I can't speak to that. I believe you. And that's, reprehensible. But he has a following of folks who, some of them obviously have intellectual reasons why they follow him. Let's say his views on Brexit or any number of reasons. And then he likely has folks that follow him that may be on the edge of falling into the abyss, into a dangerous political ideology. And to the extent that we can get those folks either there in person at Mythcon or watching online after the fact and have a rational conversation between Carl and whoever it is, that's the whole point of that conversation.
Rational.
And I don't believe
Rational conversation.
That's
Has
very
that
generous.
happened yet?
I mean,
Yeah, I heard that he just went after Richard Carrier. Like, I think he displayed some of those erroneous, pathetic alpha traits, which
I mean,
might
he's
be a
made
little bit toxic of just
two separate apology videos, Tim. I don't know what else. I don't know what else he can do.
He could try changing the way he approaches opponents.
Yeah, I think it's about change. But
I think it was a great. I mean, that more than anything was an amazing learning opportunity where he really. I mean, he even made a video about the fact that I got to really sit back and reevaluate my shit.
He made a video to me where he just called me autistic all the time and kept saying how unpopular and what a liar I was. He just kept calling me a liar over and over again. It was bizarre.
I agree that he was aware that he had not done a good job, and consistently he does not do a good job at debates, and there's a reason for that. I think I've said this before. Most people, when you say they just don't do well in debates, what you mean is they're not personable, they're not extroverted, they're shy, they don't know how to put forward their ideas verbally. None of that is Carl's problem. Carl's problem is the ability to formulate things logically.
Dunning-Kruger, absolutely.
That is his problem. His problem is that he's a free speech warrior who will say that McCarthy did nothing wrong over and over again.
No, Chrissy,
he's not coherent in his thought processes.
The whole point is that debate after debate, whatever it is, he continues to, and you can argue on what level this is, but he continues to improve and evolve. And even when he's wrong, like in this particular case, at least he owns up to his mistakes. And I've seen plenty of people who suck ass or lie, and then they double down on whatever they did. And this is someone who has enough introspection to be able to do that. And I think to an extent, we owe some respect there, and acknowledge the fact that there's that.
It was
He's not like that for years. He's just been the most hard-headed, stubborn human being in existence. And
he might be stubborn, but it was a debate with Christy Winters that helped convince me. Yes, he can have a reasonable, rational debate. Whoever won, I mean, I guess that's up to the viewers, but he absolutely can do this. And his fans aren't a monolith of him. They're not a bunch of
and believe me, I've talked to him about his conversation with Richard Spencer and whoever the other alt-writer is.
Millennial Woes.
Millennial Woes. When he was hanging out in Milwaukee, I was like, dude, that was not your best showing. Like, you got really angry at him and in a variety of different things. And he was like, yeah, it wasn't my best. Like, I'm sure next time I could do better. So this is someone who likes being on stage, but then also takes lessons learned from every time he does it. So
he hasn't taken the lesson.
You have to actually see somebody do better. Like, it's very easy to keep saying you're going to do better, or you're self-reflective. But from the debates that I see with him, he's constantly doing this gaslighting thing where he's like, you're part of the problem and you don't even realize it. You don't even know you're being racist right now because this is what you believe and this is what the people believe.
It's like
and this is what you stand for.
But his own fans will critique him.
It's a very cheap technique.
He's trying to land an ollie like 15 times in a row. At some point, he's going to get it. The whole point is he's actually engaging in dialogue. So
why can't you listen to what someone's saying? Like, if I just kept saying to you guys all the time, this is what your conference is about, you don't even realize it, and this is what you think is okay, and this is what you believe, eventually you'd say, this seems really disingenuous, Tim, and you're a kind of an arsehole, and you wouldn't be giving me all this credit about me going off somewhere else saying, I really got to do better than just be an arsehole.
But these types of criticisms fall on both sides of the divide. Like, Chrissy, I know that Christy's your friend, but for example, in terms of her relationship to us, she's dogpiled on us repeatedly on Twitter and leveled a lot of I would call bullshit claims. And we try not to call anyone out, but it gets, it definitely gets to you at some point. And at that point, you don't know what to do because, again, you're dealing with either false criticism or just opinions and online Twitter harassment. So what do you do?
All right. So take that emotional state and say, does that make you more open to having dialogue? Is that helpful? Could you start to have
It doesn't stop
with a dialogue?
It makes us less likely to have dialogue with her, but not a dialogue in general. Obviously, we're talking to you guys.
So, and I'm not, when I say that, I'm not trying to, Christy is far and away smarter than Carl, but I don't think that I'm not trying to make them equivalent, but I know that Christy is tough. I know that she's
not dumb. That I'm certain.
Yeah, I know that she's tough. Like, I don't, I have respect for how tough she is. And she doesn't back down from her ideas and her points of view. So I get that.
But isn't that what you want, though? Somebody that can look into the mirror and say, you know what, I was right 90% of the time, but this 10%, I was wrong. I mean, I did see.
I can't believe you think that's Sargon. Like, that's just crazy.
But he did on the dogpiling portion. Like, I think it really hit him when he'd taken a picture of somebody at the mall in Britain that had a feminist T-shirt. What he didn't realize is that some of his people would actually figure out who that was because that had the headshot. He was cared about the T-shirt, and then somehow she got doxxed, and he was like, "Oh shit." And he immediately said to stop doing this. He apologized to her. I've never seen him more concerned. And then after that, I saw him say, guys, don't contact the person who is writing this article. Don't do this. He started to say, not doing this. That's growth and change. As far as
I think it's going to remain to be seen. Like, I think, Richard Carrier was not a high point in anybody's for anybody, but
he was for me.
But he apologized that he was aggressive in that.
All right, so he apologized, but that's his last debate. So what you have to see is if he has a conversation with the next person, is he going to stop trying to be Ali? Is he going to stop?
That's right. That's true.
But okay, we can ask it. So the apologies, maybe something, maybe it's not enough. But has Christy apologized to anyone?
ever.
I don't. Yes, she has apologized ever, but like,
All right,
We're
we're gonna wait. We're gonna check our DMs and see if anything comes in.
I don't actually think that she feels like she owes you an apology, and I don't think she's
that's
going
the
to
problem.
give you.
That's the shitload convention thing that I was talking about.
No, absolutely.
I don't care.
Mischaracterization. We are not a Nazi training camp.
But when
that's
you
a
don't,
bullshit thing
but
to
when
say.
you don't, with
Well, that wasn't what she said.
Dan
That was what Dan Arrow.
That was Dan Arrow.
Like, you'd have to give me a specific thing that
Oh, this
she
is what
said.
your
No,
people
but if
believe.
you're Donald
Chrissy.
Trump and you
This
never
is your
apologize,
side, Chrissy.
we critique that, right? When has Trump ever apologized? The only time I saw close to it was with the Fox News Kelly, Megyn Kelly, and he said, "Well, that'll never happen again, Kelly." That was as close to an apology as I've ever
president.
can get, and like, so he's never apologized, and we generally think that that's a bad thing with Trump. So, you know,
You're American.
never
You're
done it.
president.
I've seen her apologize on more than one occasion, so I know that she does it. Like,
Right. And I don't want to compare. It's not, but what I guess our contention was that Sargon, like, flaws and good, again, everybody's a mix of good and problematic.
He continues to have conversations with people he disagrees with, which is
a funny thing. He said he wouldn't apologize to Jess Phillips because she's
good heart,
powerful.
and that's where he's going. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, he said he wouldn't apologize to Jess Phillips because she's powerful, and I was like, that's fascinating. So he believes in like power dynamics.
and he wouldn't. Well, he also said he would never apologize for going on that stream of the day our friend died.
Gloating about our friend being murdered. Yeah.
So, like, I mean, it's all well and good that when he's publicly humiliated and made to look like a fool, he can admit it. When
he mostly
there's not
apologizes
much.
just for his own fuck ups, but if he feels that he hasn't fucked it up, he won't apologize at all. Like, he felt like the wouldn't even rape you thing was fine, and he felt like the laughing at our friend being murdered was fine. And he's fine about these kind of things. And he would never like apologize to his video to me, calling me autistic and saying I'm a loser and saying I have no friends and I'm a terrible human being and a liar. Like, he's not
but Tim, I guess the entire point is that he has a rather large following, right? If you were to go right, and regardless of what you think about his views, if you were to engage him in a conversation on his channel, on yours, whatever it is, you have the ability to reach 1 million people at that point, or roughly, give or take. Okay, isn't that something where if you feel you have a message that's worth promoting, you're going to use that platform via his viewers, whatever it is.
I've seen tons of progressives on Hannity.
I mean, I will cement this in reality. At Mythcon, regardless of what you thought about his performance, there were a ton of people coming up to Richard afterwards that were Sargon supporters saying, we really thought that you had a lot of great points. And Chrissy, you may not agree with Richard's social justice approach. It is very moderated, but he did win a lot of people over. And if that's not a fucking home run, I have no idea what is for the side of social justice.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that there are, if your real goal is to get dialogue, I think that you have to consider whether or not the guests you invite actually foster dialogue, not whether or not they're willing to do it themselves sometimes, but whether or not they foster an environment where an actual dialogue can happen.
Yeah, I think that's our job, and that's what we're trying to do. So we're, again, any critiques that people want to send our way, we'll kind of absorb and roll in. But
we heard a lot about the moderator thing and the fact that we need to do a better job of that. We've taken that to heart, and so the prep ahead of time, making sure that people have reasonable conversations, and we did have prep sessions, but we think they need to be in a different format. So. Yeah. We've definitely taken those.
I think there's a good point to end on, and the Sargon thing. I mean, I get it. We hear your opinions, but do remember that Jefferson and Adams were at each other's throats like their entire political careers. But when they were in their 80s, did write letters to each other all the time. Things can change.
Is Sargon Jefferson or Adams in this?
Didn't both of them own slaves?
I don't even think Aaron
down that hole.
Sargon's Aaron Burr. Like
That's good.
But,
He'll like,
but it is a bit conflicting to me because you're talking about it being the realm of ideas, but also as like a promotional tool. And another criticism I saw was that it's just some big club for YouTubers to go and pat themselves on the back and wank themselves off or whatever, and all the plebs, off.
what's wrong with that, Tim?
yeah, Tim.
I don't know, but just the idea that it's like a little club, that the
Don't
disagreements.
kink
But
shame
you
us.
should- Tim, you should come next time. The people were great. They'd love to meet you. I met a lot of people. It was not a shitlord con as far as like the audience. There were plenty of people all over. Like really, there
were a few, a couple.
I was sitting next to them, so I can.
Yeah, you met both of them, so that was
I
cool.
guess it is a good promotional possibility. So I could just go there and advertise my supplements. I don't have any supplements. I have to get some.
But, well, give me the YouTube channel, Tim Demotivatoropinion on YouTube.
Nobody's perfect. Everyone learns as they go.
Soon to have supplements.
So folks who are listening, Chrissy is Chrisiousity on the YouTubes. Tim is Tim Demotivator. He demotivates every passing minute.
Yep, that's my job.
and then obviously follow him on Twitter. And this was an awesome conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.